Council on Aging of West Florida board member Kathleen Logan just released a book titled Women's Wisdom, Pass It On. In the book, Kathleen shares her own life experiences and what she has learned that will help other women become wiser and more complete. Joining us now to tell us more about the book is Kathleen Logan. Good morning, Kathleen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, first things first, I want to acknowledge the fact that you're very active with Council on Aging and our board of directors, so thank you so much for your involvement with that.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be on the board. It's a really excellent board.
Well, we're glad to hear you say that, of course.
Of course.
But you're also very actively involved in the community in other ways. Tell us a little bit about that.
For several years, my husband and I and a few other people worked very hard to reduce the poverty rate in Escambia County, although we live in Santa Rosa. And unfortunately,
it's a community
Yes, it's
effort.
a whole community, and unfortunately we tried that right around 2008, and it went downhill.
Right.
That was sad. But I think we helped educate a lot of people. There are so many factors that figure into poverty and how to get out of it, and a lot of wonderful things are still being done as a result of community efforts at that time.
And I'm sure, you know, as a result of your community involvement, you've learned a lot about yourself, things that maybe you want to pass along to folks, and as a result, you've written a book, and that's kind of what you're here to talk about. So tell us, what's the name of the book, what is it about, who's it for?
Women's Wisdom, Pass It On.
Which I love.
Thank you
Obviously,
very much.
as a woman, I value that.
Yes, yes, and I struggled with the title for a long time. I must have had 150 or 200 titles because I thought, who am I to put myself out there as a wise woman? I don't feel that wise. But eventually I found a quote that said, we all have wisdom, and we do. We don't, none of us knows everything, but we all know something. And we all have learned a few things along the way, and I thought, why not share? So my whole goal with the book, which I think you've seen before.
Beautiful cover.
Thank you. It feels good.
It does.
Is to say these are some topics of interest to me, whether it was a subject that someone else brought up and said, I really need some help on this, or a discussion group that I'd led, or my own life experiences, and thought, I could have handled this better. And maybe
I think we all have those moments.
Yes, so it's a collection of very real life things. This is by no means an academic book.
Sure. Well, and there's a lot of value in that, and I know that, you know, along my career and even in my personal life, I've been able to make it because I've had folks who've taught me based on their, you know, mistakes or experiences, and have shared those things with me. Hopefully it's that I could avoid some of it.
Yes.
But why do you think there's a need for a book like this?
Interesting. We have fewer friends than in the 1980s. We, as a group, as a community of people, we have a third fewer close friends. That was one thing.
Interesting.
Yes.
What do you think's behind that?
And there's a significant increase in the number of people who say they have no close friends, which I think is terribly sad. We all need social support. The second thing that dawned on me just a couple days ago is that family size is shrinking. My mother had 10 brothers and a sister, and that was not abnormal.
Right.
But since the 1960s and the advent of birth controls, the size of families have been shrinking, which in many ways is good, but that by the same token limits your familial connections and resources. You have fewer siblings.
Well, and one thing that came to mind when you talked about we have fewer close friends, I feel sometimes, especially with women, maybe it's the media or whatever we're hearing, external things we're hearing, I think sometimes we can be very jealous and backbiting. Maybe there's some competition there. And so maybe those friendships are not being developed the same way. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
Personally, I have not found that to be true.
Well, that's good.
For me. Like you and I complement each other, I think, very well in the things that we do, and I honor what you do, and you trust what I do, and for the most part, that's true. I do know that that happens. I think women entering the workforce, which is a wonderful thing also, but the downside is we don't have the time for friendships that we used to.
Sure.
Interesting, too, that when men talk to each other, and this is not meant to be a joke, but it's often true, that they will sit side by side and watch TV, and what do you
Right.
think about that?
That's
No,
their
you
quality
made it, you
time.
made it. And women like to gather around the
Right.
table and look each other in the eye. So my hope is that to fill that gap of friendship
Mm-hmm.
and family, that maybe, and then the other thing I find is that everybody on TV is perfect. Nobody has.
Well,
I mean,
not
they-
this TV.
They are beautiful. They are perfect.
Yeah.
And they're
yeah.
not. They're not very
Not
human.
real, yeah.
They're not real. And my hope is that those folks who think that they have to just put up a good face,
Sure.
keep that facade up that I'm fine, thank you, I don't have any problems in the world, but let me read your book. Maybe there's something I could learn.
Right,
So
absolutely.
it's another way of sharing with somebody.
Right.
It just happens to be on paper.
That's good stuff. But this is not your first book. You've written another one. Tell us about that.
Well, Dr. Betsy Smith, who used to be a vice president at PJC, when it was PJC, now PSC, and I, when she retired, we wrote Second Blooming for Women, Growing a Life That Matters After 50, because that is a very significantly marginalized group of people. Sadly, just when we are getting smart and skilled and competent and useful, we're kind of saying, you're too old.
Right.
So that Second Blooming for Women book was to help women find out what they wanted to do with themselves for the rest of their lives, to help them find their sense of purpose, and then go do it.
Perfect. Well, and both of them are great resources, and I'm sure our audience is going to want to grab this book. Tell us where you could find it.
They are both available through any bookstore. You can
Which
order
makes
them.
it easy.
Yes. And Amazon.com, of
Perfect.
course. They're both on
Kindle
all the
and-
electronic devices.
Awesome.
And Angel's Garden Gift Shop, 1208 North 12th, right here in Pensacola. Angel's Garden Gift Shop is a wonderful, enriching, a soul-enriching store. So I highly recommend it anyway, but it's available, both of them, always there.
And you have a website too, correct? Tell us about your website.
Do the www, Women's Wisdom, pass it on.
Perfect.
All squished,
Yes,
of course.
so if someone wants more information about
Can go
exactly what the
there.
book is about, they can check it out there.
Yes.
So, to wrap it up a little bit, is there something that you really want our viewers to know about this book? Maybe a favorite thing that you've learned that you're sharing in this book, something that they could kind of grasp on and make them motivated to kind of go out and get it.
There are a lot of ways to learn. We don't all have to learn alone the hard way. That if we share with each other, then we can skip a lot of problems, or at least minimize the negative effects. That if we look after each other and share and build each other up, we individually and as a community will all be better off.
Perfect.
And
Thank
it's
you so
my
much.
way of sharing.
Yes, and again, I think we're showing the cover on the screen at some point too. So it's a great book, and I really appreciate you coming on the show again. And you're just amazing, and
thank you.
we love you at Council on Aging. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, Rachel. You're
All right,
doing a great
Kathleen.
job.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Kathleen.